Today we're going to talk about circles. This is going to be a continuation from what you did in geometry. Let's begin by talking about the standard form equation for a circle, as well as what we can kind of get from that. So the standard form equation for a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. This is going to be equal to r squared, the radius. Well, h and k, this is going to be the x and the y values for your center of the circle, respectively. So h is going to be the x value for the center of your circle, k is going to be the y value for the center of your circle, and r, well, this is the radius. Well, since x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, then I can also find the radius of this by taking the square root of both sides. Since this is r squared, the square root, this is just going to be r. The radius is equal to the square root of the other side is going to be the square root of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. This is going to be useful for when I'm given partial information about the circle, but that information doesn't include the radius, and I would need to find that. So let's talk about the type of problems then that we might get. The first one here says, write the equation for a circle with center C is negative 3, 2, and radius, well, r equals 4. So let's put down h here. This would be negative 3, and k, this would be 2, and then r is 4. Well, the standard form just as we had above, is the following. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared. This is equal to r squared. Since we now know h is negative 3 and k is 2, as well as r is 4, we're just going to go ahead and plug all of these in here. So I'll have x minus negative 3 squared plus y minus 2 squared. This is equal to 4 squared. Well, note that the standard form is x minus h, and then over here y minus k. Since h was negative 3, this ends up being x minus negative 3. If I subtract a negative, it's really like seeing a positive here, so I can change this to x plus 3. So this will be x plus 3 squared, and then plus this y minus 2 squared. And then go ahead and square your radius. 4 squared, that's going to be 16. All right, so when I'm given the center and the radius, there's not a whole lot to do. Pretty much take a look at the standard form, plug in h, k, and r, and then simplify. It is when I'm given information like in example B here, where I've got a circle with center C is negative 4, negative 3. So let's go ahead and say h here, and then k here. And it contains the point P is 2, 5. So what this is saying is I don't know the center of the or I do know the center of the circle, but I don't know the radius. And I know one single point on the circle. Well, at that one point, this is the x value of that one point, and this is the y value of that one point. So I can start with the standard form again. That is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. This is equal to r squared. Now I know h and k. That's the center, negative 4 and negative 3. And for this one point, I can plug in 2 for x and 5 for y. So it will end up looking like this. Instead of x minus h, this will be 2 minus negative 4 squared plus y minus k will be 5 minus negative 3. This will be squared. This is equal to r squared. All right, so let's figure out 2 minus negative 4. This is the same as saying 6. 2 minus a negative, that's 2 plus 4. So this will be 6 squared plus 5 minus negative 3, that'll be 8. So 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to r squared. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. So I can say r squared is 36 and 64, make 100. And then we'll take the square root. So r is equal to, the square root of 100 is 10. Now that I've got the center and the radius, I can go ahead and fill in h, k, and r in the standard form. So that's going to be x minus negative 4 squared plus y minus negative 3 squared. This is going to be equal to 10 squared. Last step, let's just clean this up a bit. X plus 4 squared plus y plus 3 squared. This is equal to 10 squared is 100. Now what you could have done is recognize right away that you're looking for the radius, and you could have started with r equals the square root of this side here, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, plugged everything in, and that would have gotten you the same thing. So now, let's talk about rewriting the equation for a circle and graphing what the circle looks like, but you're not given the equation in standard form. You might be given this in expanded form. So what that means is, take a look at A. I've got x squared plus y squared minus 10x plus 6y plus 30. All of this is equal to 0. Well, this is going to require us to complete the square for both x and y in order to get this equation in standard form, which is going to be a lot easier for us to see where is the center, where's the radius, or how long is the radius, and then from there be able to graph it a lot easier than just this. So here's what I would do. First, let's subtract this 30 from both sides. I want to get any constants over to the other side. As I'm doing that, I'm also going to group up the x parts and the y parts together. So I'll have x squared minus 10x Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say plus and leave a blank spot here. Then I want to do the y parts. So I've got y squared plus 6y. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave a blank spot here. So all of the x parts are grouped up. All of the y parts are grouped up. This is going to be equal to, now I've got 0 minus 30, so this will be negative 30. But since I left kind of this open spot for the x's, I'm going to leave an open spot for the x's over here. since I left an open spot for the y's, I'm going to have an open spot over here as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the square for the x parts, and then when I add b over 2 squared, I'm going to do that here as well as over here, which is why I left a blank spot on the left side of the equation and the right side of the equation for the x's. So let's do the x parts first. I'm going to end up adding b over 2 squared. Now b is negative 10, but when I complete the square, I kind of want to think of it as a positive number. So b over 2 squared would be a positive 10 over 2 squared. This is 5 squared. So I'm going to take this 5 squared and I'm going to add it here, but I'm also going to add it here. Okay, now for the y parts. For the y parts, b over 2 squared, b is 6, so this is going to be 6 over 2, or 3 squared. That means I'm going to add 3 squared here, but then I also add 3 squared on the other side. So now I've completed the square for both the x parts and the y parts. Let's actually now take the perfect square trinomial that I've created for the x parts and factor that. And I'm going to do the same thing for the y parts as well. So how that's going to factor is a set of parentheses squared, where I take the square root of the first term. Well, since this is x squared, the square root would just be x. The square root of the last term, since this is 5 squared, this will be 5. And I copy the sign in the middle. So x squared minus 10x plus 5 squared, this will factor to x minus 5 squared. Plus, over here, do the same thing for the y's. Set of parentheses squared. Take the square root of the first term. That's going to be y. Take the square root of the last term, 3 squared, so that'll be 3. Copy the sign in the middle. And this is equal to, well, I've got negative 30 to start with. I'm going to add 5 squared, and then I'm going to add 3 squared. So this will be 4. This is your standard form. All right, but that's not all. It also asked me to graph this. Well, in order to graph this, I'm going to have to identify the center and the radius. Well, the center, this is going to be at HK. Now remember, standard form is x minus h, and then we've got y minus k. The easy way to think of this is whatever you see here, think of the opposite. So this negative 5, h is going to be a positive 5. This y plus 3, k is going to be negative 3. So my center is at 5, negative 3. The radius, this is the square root of 4, since my standard form is equal to r squared. So r is going to be the square root of 4. The radius is 2. Off to the side, let's create a graph. At 5, -3, I'm going to write down where the center is. So that'll be to the right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down 3. 1, 2, 3. And so the center is right about here. Then what I'm going to do is take the radius, which is 2. And if this is the center, then every single point is going to be 2 units away in order to make my circle. Well, the easy way to think of this is go up 2 points from my center. So if I go up 2, I'll go up 1, 2, and I'll make a point right here. Let's go down 2 as well. Down 1, down 2. We'll go to the left 2. And to the right 2. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but once you have these 4 points, kind of fill in some arcs here. So that way you can kind of create a circle. And to label where everything came from, this is the center. Once we had the center, we took the radius, which is 2, and we went up 2 here, down 2 here. We went left 2, and then right 2. Let's do one more of these. So again, let's rewrite this in standard form and then graph. The first thing I need to do is group up my x parts, group up my y parts, and any constant that I have, just move it to the other side. So this plus 11 at the end, let's subtract 11. And then start grouping up. So for the x parts, I'll have 4x squared plus 8x. And then also, same thing as last time, leave a little blank here. Plus the y parts, 4y squared minus 16y, plus a little blank part here. So the x parts are now grouped up, the y parts are grouped up. This is going to be equal to negative 11, and then plus a blank spot for the x, and 1 for the y. What's important to note is that when I go to complete the square, I actually want a to be 1. And right now for the x parts, a is 4. And that's the same for the y parts. I've got 4y squared here as well. So what I'm going to do is factor out a 4, bring that to the front, essentially dividing each of these terms by 4. So I'll bring the 4 out to the front. And I've got x squared left over, 4x squared divided by 4. Plus, I'll have 2x left over here, 8x divided by 4. It's going to be 2x. Plus this blank spot. I'm going to do the same thing for the y parts. Factor out the 4. And you'll have y squared minus 4y plus this blank. Now note, because I pulled out a 4 here and I had this blank spot, I've also got to do that to this kind of blank spot for the x's on the right side of the equal sign. So over here, I'm going to have minus 11. So what we're going to do here is let's bring out a 4. So I'll have a 4 here and then kind of this blank spot. I'm going to do the same thing for the y. Since I brought a 4 out here, I'll bring out a 4 here. Now I can go ahead and complete the square. So I've got the x parts here. Let's find b over 2 squared. Since b is 2 now, this will be 2 over 2 squared, or just 1 squared. For the y parts, again, I want to think of b as positive, even though it's a negative 4 here. So b over 2 squared, think of this as a positive 4 over 2 squared, and this will be 2 squared. Now, let's go ahead and add those in. So I'm going to add 1 squared to the left side of the equal sign here, but that also means I have to add 1 squared over here. Do the same thing for the y's. So I've got 2 squared. Let's add 2 squared here and over here. Now I'm ready to factor this. Factoring this perfect square trinomial will give me a set of parentheses squared. Inside, I'll have the square root of my first term, so that'll be x. Square root of my last term, that's 1. Copy the sign in the middle. Don't forget, you factored out a 4 here, so that's why we got to have a 4 here as well. Plus, now we'll do that for the y parts. Square root of the first term is y. Square root of the last term is going to be 2. Sign in the middle. Don't forget your 4. This is equal to. On the right side of the equal sign, let's just plug that into the calculator and find out what that is. Negative 11 plus 4 times 1 squared plus 4 times 2 squared. This is 9. Lastly, standard form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. Currently, I've got a 4 in the front of that part for the x's and a 4 in the front of this part for the y's. So I'm just going to divide everything, convenient that they're the same, I'm going to divide everything by 4. Divide the left side by 4 and the right side by 4. Four divided by 4 will be 1. Same thing here. So the standard form will be x plus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared. This is equal to 9 over 4. Now I've also got to graph this. The benefit of putting this in standard form is that now, instead of seeing this expanded equation, here not only does it look a little shorter, a little nicer, but I can see where the center is. The center is at HK. And the easy way to think about that is opposite of what you see here. So x plus 1, h is going to be negative 1. And the opposite of what you see here, y minus 2, k is going to be positive 2. And the radius, this is going to be the square root of what is on the right side of the equal sign. So r will be equal to the square root of 9 over 4. Luckily, 9 is a perfect square and 4 is a perfect square. So when I go to take the square root of this, the radius will be 3 over 2, 3 halves, or you can think of that as like 1.5. So let's make a graph to the right. I'll first find where the center is. That's negative 1, 2. So let's go to the left 1 and go up 2. So the center will be somewhere right around here. Now for the radius. Again, every single point on this circle is going to be 3 halves away from the center, or 1.5. So if I'm going up 1.5, let's say this is 1 and this is 2, up 1.5 would be about here. Down 1.5 would be 1 and then a half, so like right here. To the left 1.5, left 1 here, left 2 here, so halfway there. And then to the right 1.5, right 1, this would be right 2. So right 1.5 would be right about there. Once you have those, just kind of fill in your arcs. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're doing this by hand. And let's label. This was the center. This was up 3 halves, or 1.5. This was down 3 halves. To the left 3 halves. And this is right 3 halves. So for circles, in this section, the biggest thing is your standard form. Remember that your standard form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. If you're given partial information, you're able to then write what the standard form of the equation is. Even if you're not given the radius, you might be given information on how to find the radius and then plug it all in. If you're given an expanded equation, like these last two problems, then you're going to have to do some completing the square for both the x parts and the y parts. Once that is done, you will have the standard form, and then the center and the radius will be a lot easier to find that way. Go ahead and graph based on that. If you have questions, please let me know. Have a great day.